Welcome to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio.
Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Ken Hoffman. You're listening to Ag Matters Radio. I'm a farmer out here in Palmer. My business is Matsu Microgreens. We grow small vegetables and things of that nature. And I'm also the executive director of the Matsu Farm Bureau. If anyone's interested in joining the Farm Bureau or becoming a farmer, joining the agriculture community, you can always reach out to me at matsufarmbureau@gmail.com, or you could visit the Farm Bureau's website at alaskafb.org. All right, so today we have a special guest. We have Bryce Wrigley calling in all the way from Delta, and he's going to tell us about his business. I'm sure everybody's heard about it or at least seen the ads on YouTube or in the radio. So, Bryce, thanks for coming on, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to connect. I think it's really important that farmers around the state stay in touch with each other. We know what happens when people can operate in silos, and being able to synergistically develop markets and work together on products and projects, I think, a better way of making progress. But yeah, my name is Bryce Wrigley. I moved here in 1983 with my family and started farming in Delta. Been doing it since then. We raised about everything from potatoes and broccoli to custom work and hay and oats and barley, and ultimately barley, because that was what we came up to, but it was kind of a roundabout way to get to where we were. I farmed with my family here in Delta since then, raising primarily barley. And in 2005, I was watching the news on Hurricane Katrina, and I remember hearing that somebody had shot his neighbor for food, and it just really impacted me and made me start thinking about what would happen in Alaska if there was an earthquake or some other disaster. And so I started thinking, what could we do in our family to improve Alaska's food security? So since we're already raising barley, I wondered if there was a way of making flour out of barley. And we got some hulless barley seed from the university and started raising some of that. Built a flour mill, and we expanded the flour mill and to a bakery, started a bakery about 3 years ago. I guess this is our third year, primarily focused on providing frozen baked products to restaurants and food service people. But everything we've done has been geared toward getting local grown food into Alaska and developing a market so that food is always available, even if there is a transportation disruption. So we've been doing that. About 15 years ago, we started no-tilling, and I just really loved what the no-till program was doing to our soil. I think it's important to manage our soil so that we don't lose the carbon in the soil, and we live in a windy area. There was just a lot of issues with tilling that popped up from time to time, and so I really liked what I was doing, and that kind of prompted me to start looking more into soil health. And so since 2010, we've been really focused on soil health and the way we farm and how we're managing the soil and the ground that we're stewards of. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell. Really enjoy working with my family. My son Milo runs the flour mill. I help him do that, and then I run the farm, and he helps me do that. So it works out for us.
That's a good partnership. All right. So I want to talk more about the farming side of the business. So the barley, how many acres of barley are you guys cultivating? And are you guys only growing barley? Or are you doing any other grain crops?
We are not doing any other grain crops. Our farm is 1,700 acres, and we plant about a third of that to barley, and a third is fallow for the next year because we rotate, and then about a third is in grass hay. And I've been letting a neighbor farmer take the hay off of it. He needs it. I didn't need it. Helps him out. And it's a beneficial thing to me because it keeps our farm looking nice and trim and clean looking, not a lot of weeds and stuff, rank grass growing up. So I like the way that relationship is working out. And we only raise barley, but we raise two kinds of barley. One is the animal feed, so that's a covered barley. And then the other, which we run through the flour mill, is a hulless barley developed in University of Alaska Fairbanks, and then we're looking forward to maybe the next new release of hulless barley. Hopefully it will be even better than Sunshine was, but that's probably about 4 or 5 years out, I'm guessing.
Okay, so do you go from barley to fallow to hay back to barley? Is that the order?
No, the hay is not part of the rotation.
Okay.
The hay is just there, yeah. So we do a barley fallow rotation.
Got it.
And then I started working with cover crops about 8 years ago. And so I took one field, 200-acre field, I cut it in half, and I've been rotating that for the last 8 years with cover crops and barley. And the reason I did that was I wanted to see if it would improve the soil fertility. It's expensive to raise barley, which doesn't really bring a lot of money in. And so I was hopeful we could reduce the amount of fertilizer that is required by using cover crops. But at the same time, it costs $80 to $100 an acre to put cover crops in, and I don't harvest any of that. And so I didn't want to put it in the whole farm or on the whole farm. I just didn't feel like I could take that risk, but I was willing to risk 100 acres of it and do that for a while. My son asked me today, he said, how long I'm going to keep doing cover crops? I said, well, probably another 15 years I should start seeing some improvement. Soil changes fairly slowly, but I really do love the cover crops. And so when you asked me a little earlier about what other things we raise, I kind of consider cover crops as a crop, even though we're not taking anything off of it. Yeah, I'd love to be able to pasture some cows out there, but I'm not set up for cows. And we do get the bison and the moose in wintertime. They come and make use of it. Then in the spring, we just plant right into it. As soon as the snow's melted off and the ground's thawed out, we just till right into it. And that's been a real time saver, money saver, doing that no-till thing. Just saves the equipment and saves the labor.
I'm a big fan of no-till generally, but I'm just curious. You just drill right into the cover crop? You don't do any sort of prepping the seed bed or anything like that?
No, we don't. We go right into the cover crop or right into stubble. If we kill the grass and expand, put some fields in production, we just kill the grass, and then the following year we go right into that, and it never gets tilled up.
Amazing. So have you noticed the cover crop helping with fertility? Do you have to still added fertilizers to your fields?
Yep, we still do add fertilizer. I kind of watched that. Several years ago, we'd been cover cropping at that time for about probably 3 rotations, and I thought, okay, I wonder if this is doing any good. I took a portion of that field and I halved the amount of fertilizer we put on. Mm-hmm. Took all of that to the co-op so that it was weighed, just took it to the co-op and stored it. So I combined those 2 parts of the field, separately and weighed them separately. And I was actually surprised at how well the half rate of fertilizer did under cover crops, but it didn't do well enough to offset the cost of the fertilizers. I really don't care what my yield is. I care what the profit is.
For sure.
And so if the yield is a little lower, I'm okay with that as long as I've had a corresponding savings in the cost of production. And so that was kind of what I was looking for. And so then last year, I took a portion of the field that had been in cover crop the previous year, so we're planting grain in it last year. And I did the same thing, but I didn't reduce it 50%. I reduced it 20% because I had read that if you provide all of the nutrients the plant needs, the soil doesn't have to step up and develop the system to provide that fertilizer. And so what I read suggested dropping the fertilizer rate by 20%, and then following year another 20%. So I decided to try that. But the problem is that's my rotation. So last year I did that. This year it's in cover crops, so I didn't do it. Next year I'll try it again and see. Last year, after the 20% reduction, couldn't really see a lot of difference in the yield. So I'm hoping that we're kind of on the right track and work to that point. But I want to make sure that these numbers are good. Every year is a little different.
Yeah,
I want to make sure that these numbers are good before I commit to something that's going to be super expensive and then blow up in my face.
Yeah, no kidding. On my farm, my outdoor farm, I also use a no-till system. But the primary reason I do that is for weed prevention, because I notice if you pulverize the soil, the seed bank of weeds, they will start germinating because it's nature's way of fighting erosion. So as long as you don't pulverize your soil, the weeds don't seem to pop up as much. Do you notice that in your fields? Do you have less weeds since you've changed to no-till?
We have fewer weeds I think we have fewer weeds, and I've noticed that same thing. Nature doesn't like bare ground, and so it puts something there to cover it. It needs to be armored. And when we cover crop on the fallow year, then we're getting competition for the weeds. In a cover crop, we're putting nutrients into the soil. We're building channels, pathways for the water and nutrients to get down into the soil, putting air in the soil. All of these are components of good soil health. And so that's important. I haven't noticed a difference in the soil fertility. I've noticed a difference in the depth and the color of the top layer of soil. We have fairly shallow soil here and not as good a soil as what you guys have down in the valley. But I was really pleased to see that when we did some shovel tests and digging some pits, that where we had been cover cropping and rotating, and of course we've been no-till too in all of this, that the layer of dark black soil is getting darker and it's getting deeper. So I'm really happy about that. Another thing that I noticed, when we started no-tilling, I was concerned about the amount of residue that was on the soil. When we first got our drill, I asked the people who made it, I said, we live in a cold environment, and if we have a lot of residue on the soil, is that going to allow the soil to warm up enough to germinate our crop in time to get it out at harvest? And they didn't know. They thought it probably would, but that they didn't know. And so I went ahead and jumped, and we started planting and noticed an increase, obviously, in the amount of residue on the soil, because we're just planting right into the residue. And then it just got more and more, and I was a little concerned that the amount of straw would overwhelm the soil's ability to use it up, to break it down. I even asked NRCS about burning it, but they said, no, don't burn it. And so I didn't, and and it took about 4 years, and all of a sudden I just realized that was not a problem anymore. And I think what happened is that, I'm sure what happened is that the soil, it had to build the capacity to manage that kind of residue, that level of residue. And so now we have never had any problem with too much residue, too cold a soil, anything like that. So there are changes to the soil, positive changes to the soil that I've definitely seen.
Amazing.
But the soil fertility is not something that I've seen a big increase yet in. And I may know more next year when I replant this test strip that I did, with the 20% reduction of fertilizer. And then to fine tune that, it was easy for me to just reduce the amount of fertilizer I'm putting on by changing gears on the fertilizer meter, because we put it through the drill. But maybe there's a better way of doing it. Maybe it needs a little more phosphate or potash or something, and maybe I just need to decrease the nitrogen a little. Those kind of things are things that we really need some research in, and that research hasn't been able to be done. So we do some of that stuff here. Just because we're just curious, want answers right now, and don't want to wait for somebody to come up with a grant or something to study it.
Agreed. Yeah. So when are you drilling your grain, and when are you harvesting?
So we start planting usually around the 15th and the 20th of May. I wait a little later than most of my neighbors. My drill is heavy. I want to make sure that the soil is not too wet, so I'm compacting it and that it's got enough strength there to support the weight of the machinery. So I usually wait a few days later than what the neighbors start. But by the time harvest comes, I'm harvesting at about the same time as they are. So we're saving moisture. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen with the no-till, is that the moisture savings is unbelievable. Now, this year we didn't get moisture. We didn't get any rain planting probably until about the third week of June. And I was a little concerned about the crop, but I'm looking at the crop right now, and it looks really good. It's even. It's just really looks good for not having any moisture in the beginning, which is really important, because if you don't get even germination, then you wind up dealing with it at harvest, where you've got two different ages of crop.
Okay. Wow. Amazing. So I want to talk a little bit more about Alaska Flour Company now, the value-added side of the business. And so I'm curious, how did you guys decide to go all in on value-added products? Why didn't you guys just stick to selling barley wholesale?
So it really focused on that whole thing really was what can we do for food security in Alaska? The wheat is not a reliable crop that we can grow in Alaska. We've grown it, we've made bread with it in our family, and we've done that. But, to have good quality wheat that we would want to put our name on, it needs to have a falling number somewhere around 300. Falling number is one of the measurements of quality. And so people that are making flour and making bread with flour, there's certain things they kind of expect out of that flour. They've been making this for a long time, doing this stuff for a long time, cooking and stuff, baking with it. And so if you're going to introduce a product that is not going to perform the way they're used to, then they're not going to be happy with it. And because of that, we didn't feel like wheat was a product to focus on for food security. And it was fortunate for us that we learned that the university had released the Sunshine Hulless barley. And in some places in the world, wheat is kind of the staff of life, but in other places of the world, barley is that staff of life. And so the grain of choice is barley. And so we kind of launched off there because barley is a shorter season crop. It's much more reliable to grow than wheat, less impacted by rain. And that's the biggest challenge we have, I think, with wheat. We can grow it and everything, but our season up here, almost always we get a lot of rain right about harvest time. And that for wheat is a bad thing. It activates the alpha amylase in the kernel. You may not see it sprouting, but that process has started, and that's what drops the falling number. The best we've seen around here was about 175, falling number of 175, which is considerably lower than what we would want to put our name on. Mm-hmm. And so from a standpoint of food security, we just really decided barley was probably the best thing. It was after we started doing the barley, and we were contacted by a doctor about stuff that we didn't even know about. He was a doctor that treats diabetes, and he told us about some of the benefits that barley has over any other grain as far as treating diabetes and preventing diabetes. And so that really kind of tuned us up to the health benefits of barley. It's high in beta-glucans, which is really good thing for people with prediabetes or diabetes. And then it's high in fiber, soluble and insoluble fiber. So those things are good for your gut, your health, your heart, and as well as the diabetes. It's a low glycemic index food. So people who, again, are diabetic, they should be eating low glycemic index foods. And barley is a 26, whereas white flour is a 100. So it's considerably lower. So those are benefits, if you will, that we learned about the barley after we started doing it. But really the impetus for the whole effort and the decision to go into the flour mill was just how do we get a grain that can provide a source of food for people into a form that they are used to and able to use. And so that's why we focused on building a value-added operation for the barley, for the Hulless barley, rather than just trying to sell the whole grain.
Amazing. So how many different products do you guys sell? And also, where can people, say in the Valley, buy your products?
Well, we sell, if they go to our website, alaskaflourcompany.com, there's a button there that says shop here or something like that. And that lists all the products we have. Some products come in and out depending on, like some are seasonal. In the wintertime, we may have different flavor of pancakes, apple cinnamon or something, or we'll have stuffing at Thanksgiving, stuffing mix. So some things come in and out of season, but that's the most current. But there's probably somewhere between 11 and 15 different products. They're available on the flour mill side. And then on the bakery side, the product that is most accessible to people, individuals, is the pizza. So we make a pre-made frozen, par-baked frozen pizza. And those are available, all of our products are available at Three Bears, all the Three Bears locations. They're available at the Safeway chain. And then there's several independent grocers that are also carrying them. So in the Valley, Natural Pantry would be one place. There's some at Johnny's Produce. So there's a number of other places, but the bigger outlets would be Three Bears and Safeway.
Okay, very good, very good. Is there anything exciting and new coming down the pipeline for Alaska Flour Company? Any potential new products that you guys are working on that our listeners might be interested in hearing about?
Well, we're always making new products and trying new products. So if it's not a new product, then we're trying to improve on an existing product. I was just talking to my son this morning about doing some taste trials with a different process for the crust for the pizzas. He's interested in trying that. We've had some preliminary trials and seems encouraging to maybe change our process a little bit on that. So you balance, anytime you do that, you balance, okay, is this enough better to make it worth the extra work? And so that's kind of, we'll decide how much better is it in the next few days. But yeah, we try new different products. I mean, we've done bagels, cookies, brownies in the bakery. These are all pre-made and frozen, but most of the bakery products are available through food service. So the schools and U.S. Foods, Cisco, those companies carry our products in the bakery. But the products from the flour mill are pretty generally available at the grocery stores that I mentioned.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bryce. I look forward to seeing you in person at our annual Farm Bureau meeting. We didn't even get to talk about Farm Bureau and your involvement in that, so maybe we'll have you back on sometime. But thank you again, Bryce, for your time, and I hope you have a successful harvest of 2025.
Well, thank you very much, Ken. I sure appreciate that, and good luck on your own farm.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
You've been listening to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska. Ag Matters is a production of Radio Free Palmer, recorded at our studios in Palmer, Alaska. For more information about this program, email manager@radiofreepalmer.org.